Welcome back to the Lights Out F1 podcast. I'm Patrick. That's Claire. That's Jakob. And today we're previewing Australia. First, I just want to know what your guys' base thoughts on the track is. Starting Claire.
Yeah, I mean, it's another street circuit, so hopefully we can get a Checo win. He got P2 last year, so I have high hopes for him. Jakob, what do you think?
I'm not a big fan of the track. It used to be super boring to watch.
Mhm.
But I think with the new cars, the racing's improved. So last year was fun to watch, and then when Max DNF'd, I was like, ooh. But um, yeah, I think it'll be an interesting battle between Max and Checo after last race. So we'll see.
Yep. There's a couple changes on the track. So there's a curb at the end of one of the at the end of one of the DRS zones. For reference, we are recording this after FP1 ended. We got to see Max spin off this curb. There's this thing. So the curb is raised. So if you have a low setup, you're going to spin off of it, as shown by Max. But there's also a new DRS zone attached, and a lot of the teams are having a hard time acclimating to it with a lot of cars running off. So I'm kind of curious if you guys are like more or less excited to see first off a fourth DRS zone and also curbs like this, maybe forcing cars to go with a little bit higher of a ride height.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw somewhere that the the owner of F1 or the president of F1, whatever, Stefano,
Yep.
Domenicali,
Yeah.
whatever his name is, he was saying that he would be okay with getting rid of free practices, but I think they're like super necessary for the teams to get acclimated and see like things that are going wrong with like curbs and more DRS, new changes to the track. So yeah, I'm kind of excited that it's going to force the cars to have a different setup. Perhaps it might shake up the field a tiny bit. Yeah, more than that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I guess for an average fan, for someone who just turns on to watch the race, free practice isn't something um people usually watch. I guess for like in-depth fans that like watching free practice and gain knowledge from it, then I guess you can watch it. But um, I think it's necessary. I think if you don't have free practice, you don't get to see fun things like max spinning and fun to curve and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. So actually, this is a good topic. One of the people in the commentator's office was there. He straight up asked, I think Julian Palmer about like how many free practices that he thinks we need. He's like, just one. Like, the F2 drivers literally learn a track in 45 minutes and then do two races on it. We could literally have one free practice session and be totally fine with it. Just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think the three. I mean, for a driver, you probably only need for one
yeah,
one free practice session. That's maybe like as opposed to an hour making an hour and a half, and a driver's fine. I think the whole purpose of or at least the teams will never get rid of three practice sessions because it
of
gives
course
them the
not. Yeah.
opportunity to constantly change setups and stuff like that. So
And that's one of the points that he was making is in three free practice sessions, and even before the practice sessions for a weekend start, everybody knows what's like the general outcome of what's going to happen in the race, just because there's so much lap delta, so much tire data, so much car data gathered within 3 hours, and even the time before that like by the time qualifying comes around, people have a pretty good idea of how the race is going to shake down. Obviously, barring reliability issues, and even that can be seen. Um, but on the topic of reliability issues, a lot of stuff is happening up and down the grid. First off, Ferrari, another change to the internal combustion engines for them, along with other parts. Haas switched their internal combustion engine.
Seriously?
Yes.
is that another
Haas,
penalty for them?
no, because they're only using, I think they're using their second and third. And
Okay.
then Haas used their second one already. Um, and Alfa Romeo switched to their second
Sheesh.
one. But off Ferrari as well, Mercedes and Aston Martin both switched to their second gearbox this season already. AlphaTauri is already switching parts of their engine. Williams already switched parts of their engine. So this is clearly becoming a very prevalent problem because these engines aren't being able to keep up with how fast the cars are starting to get. So, first off, what do you guys think about how many engine parts have already been changed on the third race of the year in a 23 race year?
That is insane that they're using up like a half or, close to all of their um, allowance of parts. Like the third race, there's something either going on with the cars that just eating up these parts, and they need to increase the allocation. Um, I just can't believe it. Honestly, it sounds absurd. Uh, these parts should be more reliable and lasting longer. So
Mm.
I'm sure they're scratching their heads, going, "I can't believe we're having to do that already." But
Yep. Jakob?
I don't particularly mind the allowances that they get because it makes for a mixed grid when penalties get kicked in, and it makes for fun races. I think it's up to the teams to make their uh, cars and engines and gearboxes and ices and all that more reliable. So, I mean, if you want to increase the allowance, increase it. But I think we're perfectly fine where it is. I'm sure at some point during the season, someone will try and lobby for an increased allowance. But
Yep.
uh, as of right now, I'm perfectly fine with
So I
the
think,
allowances that
yeah,
they get.
I think the allowance right now technically would be fine given the fact that we've only had one person serve a penalty. But I think the idea of shaking up the grid's cool, but also there's a problem when it's gonna feel like every race in the second half of the season is just mass shuffling because nobody's gonna have engine parts left. That includes Mercedes customers and that includes Red Bull customers because they're all switching parts already. Like Checo also took on a new combustion engine. Max took on a few new parts. So it's not like nobody's suffering from. Like every team on the grid suffering from this, but obviously the teams that are suffering the most are Ferrari customers, which kind of brings up the point of Ferrari customers probably aren't going to look towards Ferrari for a 2026 engine. Like this is not a good look for them. Um, do you guys see that as an upside or a downside for them?
maybe they can perhaps focus more on producing a better car than like having to create so many engines and stuff. But it's definitely a loss of revenue and just kind of like a tarnish to their brand name a little bit.
Mhm.
So I kind of see it as a downside. Obviously, they're creating engines and parts for other teams because they want to be doing that, and they think that it'll help them in the long run in some way. But it's sort of backfiring now because everyone's not gonna want to sign on, and it perhaps was like an income revenue stream that like now they're not gonna have in the future if they were counting on it.
Yep. Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, it gives them if Haas and Alfa Romeo were to switch engine suppliers, which Alfa Romeo is doing anyways.
Yeah, because Audi, I think they're
Going to
producing their own.
they're gonna yeah they're producing their own engines. So it's only Haas off of that, right?
Yeah.
So I think it gives Ferrari the opportunity to maybe build a more reliable engine
Yeah.
because it's less people you're feeding. And yeah, it'll be a loss of revenue if Haas switch over, but switch to something else. But realistically, I don't see them switching over because who are they going to go to?
Well, okay,
Renault,
so
Red Bull.
that's one of the cool things. For 2026, there are going to be 6 engine suppliers instead of 4. Red Bull has their own powertrains department. Honda is making a second one now that Red Bull bought most of the people from the Honda one. Audi is doing their own. Mercedes, Ferrari, and Renault. Um, so
Okay,
that's
wait.
a
Can
lot.
you explain the Honda and Red Bull thing difference?
So Red Bull is
Who's going to be?
yeah. So Red Bull bought the current Honda people that are making their engines, and then just rebranded it, obviously with more people of their own, to Red Bull powertrains. So Red Bull will actually be creating their own engine in factory. Honda is still planning on being an engine manufacturer for 2026. At least they've applied to be and have been accepted for it. Whether or not they'll be able to go forward with it is an entirely different thing. But they're going to have, I guess, another engine department for 2026, even after the statements, I think last year, like middle of last year, they said they wouldn't be going for engines in 2026 because they don't think that they could go for the net zero carbon footprint with with the engines that the concepts that they came up with. But I guess apparently they think they are. So yeah, six engines
What team
suppliers
would
on the
they
grid.
supply?
No one yet. That's well, so nobody has officially bought engines from anybody yet. McLaren are still in the market for one. Williams are still in the market for one. Haas are still in the market for one. And who's the other team? Aston
Aston.
Martin are still in the market for one. So obviously we know that none of those teams are making in-house engines for themselves, but nobody has solidified who they're buying from. Presumably, Williams will probably still be buying from Mercedes just because they also get their hydraulics and their I think there's another part that they get from Mercedes. And then I don't know about Aston Martin just because now that they've proven that they can work better than Mercedes and they're getting their own factory finished, I think like 3/4 of the way through the year, then they might not need Mercedes anymore. But that's up in the air. And then Haas, I mean, they have a deal with Ferrari for a while to keep producing parts at their factory, but I don't know. It's all up in the air just because there's so many teams. I don't think anybody's going to go for Audi engines because they're not proven to do anything yet. But they are a German manufacturer, so it would be cool to see another German team create an engine that's just as good as the Mercedes engine. Hopefully as reliable, that is. Off topic of reliability, because there are a lot of changes, we could talk about it all day, but turns out that every car in the grid has a little bit of Red Bull in it. If you guys watched Free Practice 1, the Sam, I forget what his last name is, he's the tech analyst for the desk, pointed out the new AlphaTauri upgrades. And there's this large bump in the floor, and he explained what the bump is. And they're these little, I don't remember the specific terminology, but they're essentially like chassis protectors produced by Red Bull. And there's one in the floor, and there's one in the side pods. And every team has the exact same one that's regulated through the FIA. So every team is a little bit Red Bull. Jakob, how do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Don't care. As long as it makes the Mercedes faster, I don't care. You want to put little Red Bull stickers on it and say Red Bull Racing? Go for it.
All right.
Make the Mercedes faster. Don't care. No, I mean, listen.
Yeah.
I think Red Bull have the best car on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
You take tech. You, generally speaking, when it's the fastest car on the grid is where most other teams will derive developments from. So. Don't have a real issue with it. It doesn't matter really.
To be honest, it actually doesn't affect performance. I just wanted you to know that Mercedes isn't entirely Mercedes. But the AlphaTauri floor, Nick DeVries, for a lot of FP1, actually held the 4th fastest time. And Yuki was holding like the number 9 time for the longest time. Obviously, FP1 not entirely representative, but it is showing that they have the pace to actually compete a bit better now. So, do you guys think we're going to have a little bit higher of an expectation than P14 for Nick DeVries this race?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him fight for a point or so. He has it in him, He did it with the Williams, so he can do it with the AlphaTauri, I think. They definitely, I think, are bringing upgrades to this race, perhaps, because the car has just been underperforming so far. So Nick DeVries has much more potential in him, even as like a rookie, because he's not really a rookie, but he is a rookie. So he has a lot more to show, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Jakob?
Nick DeVries. I think they could, if the car is as fast as it looks in FP1, and they maintain a good weekend throughout they maintain a good weekend. I think honestly they could probably pit McLaren. It's looking like they could tip McLaren standings.
Mhm.
So I think it just depends on whether we have a good weekend. I
Yeah.
think Nick DeVries is potentially, we could see him fight for points. I think he's got that. I think I highly rate him. I think he's like one of the more talented drivers, young drivers on the grid. So I think I'd love to see him compete for points. I think it's entirely possible.
Yeah. So, outside of Alfa Romeo, the only other, there actually there's two teams, but I'll get to Aston in a sec. McLaren also brought an upgrade. Not sure if you guys saw their plan, but
Thank God.
they planned two small upgrades, one for Saudi Arabia, or three. Well, two. One for Saudi Arabia, one for Australia, and then of course everybody knows the big one that's coming in Baku apparently. Um, it seemed like it was going a bit better. Lando did post the number 7 time for soft tire running in FP1. Obviously, like I said, not a representative time, but he is up there. One thing I'm curious about though is the fact that they're the only team that I've seen so far that have willingly used the aero paint that they normally use during testing during FP1. And I don't think we saw any of that last year or at all this year. So it seems like they're actually running, still running testing for their car currently. And I don't, how do you feel about that, Claire?
Okay, well, that's a little embarrassing, but whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to see, a better car for more performance for Lando and Oscar. I'm okay with it. Obviously, they're not where they want to be, but if they're using paint to test it and see what's happening, then whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting them to move up the grid.
So also,
Lando P7 is good.
yeah. So also McLaren, their update that's coming in Baku. Right now, they're still not actually up to speed, obviously. But Baku is supposed to be the update where they're gonna bring the car that they were supposed to bring for Bahrain. So right now, we're actually seeing like a very, very underdeveloped McLaren that, as Zach Brown put it, isn't as far as they expected it to be when they first started the season. So I'm kind of curious if, let's say, McLaren and like P12, P14, do you guys think that once they get their massive update, they'll be actually fighting for points on a much more regular basis?
That makes sense, obviously. But they're still going to be, on par with where teams were at the beginning of the year. And then they're going to, obviously, all the other teams are still going to be upgrading. So they may just be in a bad pattern of not being able to catch up. Who knows? It's hard to say.
One more thing about McLaren, and then I'll jump to another team. But McLaren, apart from removing James Keys and reforming their development team, they also are hiring on the old head of aero from Aston Martin, the one that Fallows and I forget the Mercedes guy that went to Aston Martin was, but they replaced him. And McLaren are taking him on next year at the start of 2024. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Aston Martin got rid of him for a reason. I wonder what it was. Like, obviously, they just wanted Dan Fowles. But new perspective is what they need at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly don't know what to say about it except for they got to do something different, or it's because whatever they're doing is not working. It wasn't working with James Key, so they're all playing catch up. I guess these department changes probably should have happened during the off season.
Yeah.
Not like in the very beginning of the season, so it's a little discombobulating and hard for the fans to get behind. But the sport is often like, oh, you have to like look at the future and like not deal with like the hardships. Like Williams saw that a lot, and they're obviously starting to grow now. So.
Yep. So off the topic of McLaren, on Aston Martin have brought their new re-wing to this race. I think it's either this race or the next one. They might have tested it for free practice one this race.
I think Jeremy was saying that Lance was running a a different rear wing than
the rear
Alonso?
wing is wider, and the concept is very very simple. Aston Martin feel that they didn't have enough downforce, and so they needed a wider rear wing. The other problem that they're having is the fact that the Mercedes engine is made for a car with very slim side pods, which Aston Martin does not have. And so it's also affecting the way that their car runs vertically and how it runs horizontally. Actually, on all three axes, if you will. So I'm kind of curious. I didn't know that problems like this existed with the engines because I thought they were all relatively like pretty similar looking in shape, weight, design, whatever. So I'm kind of curious, Jakob. How do you feel about Aston Martin still doing better than Mercedes with their engine and actually building on top of what the Mercedes engine?
I have no thought. I no listen. You give credit where credit is due. Aston Martin did a good job. They built a
Mhm.
good car. We'll see whether it's legal or not, but
Yeah,
for now it is.
yeah.
So we'll run with it. Um, I think Mercedes were underprepared for the season. I definitely think they were underprepared for the season. One cannot argue that they were prepared at all. So I think you know, it is what it is. You give credit where credit is due. I think, obviously the big upgrade that all Mercedes fans are praying for is Imola.
Yep. Is it
So
race 6 of the season?
yeah, it's after Miami.
Okay, yeah,
So
6.
we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, we pip Aston Martin in the standings, but I'm not holding out too much hope
Yeah.
on that matter.
So Aston Martin,
Wait.
yeah, keep going.
Okay, so I saw something where Lewis was like talking about the position of the cockpit and how it's forward in the Mercedes.
Yes.
Do you have any insight on that?
So the commentators were actually talking about it. The Mercedes drivers sit much farther forward and closer to their front tires than the rest of the grid, and it gives them a severely, in the words of the commentators, it gives them what could be a severely distorted feeling of what's happening in the rear end of the car compared to other drivers, because they're so far forward in the car. And you can see it in like taller people like George Russell, where you can see how close they are to the front of the car compared to other drivers. And so, Jakob, do you think that actually is having an effect on how the drivers feel about their rear end?
I mean, the rear end has been the problem for the Mercedes for the past at least the past three
Yeah.
races or two races. They've been all you've heard is complaining about the rear end,
Yep.
and I think Lewis especially he hasn't been feeling too comfortable in the car. He admitted in Bahrain, he admitted in Jeddah. So I think look, this is just like an evolution of last year's car. I think if the problem persists in after the Imola upgrade, I think then we'll have I think then there has to be maybe a if the I let's just say if the zero point concept isn't really changed, it's more evolved again in Imola, and it's still not competitive. It's still not at least getting them to within a couple of tenths of the Aston and the Red Bull. I think then there has to be like a serious discussion of whether Mike Elliott is the guy for the job.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm holding out till the Imola upgrade to make any
Yep.
comments on the Mercedes car for now.
So real quick,
Right now, it's a
there's a
shitbox.
big difference between 2/10 to Aston Martin and 2/10 to Red Bull. I'm just
No, no,
saying.
no. I meant a couple of tenths to Aston. I
Okay.
meant a
Okay.
couple of tenths to Aston Martin and Red Bull. If you can pick
Okay.
up a
Okay.
couple of tenths to Aston and Red Bull, then
Yeah.
at least you're in the fight for P2. Because right now it looks like you're in the fight for P3 with Ferrari.
Yeah. So
Obviously,
they're
yeah.
actually tied with Aston Martin on points right now, and that's after Lance Stroll didn't finish in Jeddah. So, I mean, are you holding out hope that they pull out more points over them a second time and that Lance doesn't finish, or is it like they will fall behind Aston this race?
This race, I see them falling behind, maybe competing for uh, P3, P4, P5 between at least the two. I think the Mercedes drivers will start competing with Fernando, not
Yep.
Lance, but Fernando for the podium positions, and then P4, P5. But yeah, I think look, Fernando Alonso can't can't carry the team. Like he can
I
to
mean,
an
he
extent,
can.
but if I mean, he can to an extent, but also like you have to like the second driver has to score points to
Yeah,
keep that P
you
two.
need two
Because
drivers
if
for
like
constructors.
yeah, and the difference between Aston and Mercedes is that George and Lewis will continuously score point barring any crashes or DNFs, whereas Lance Stroll is not entirely consistent to an
Yeah,
extent.
that's fair.
Like yes, his first appearance was great, and second one DNF, but Lance Stroll is not consistent. So
Mm.
I think over the season and depending on how car development goes, it'll be a tight race for between Aston, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But we'll see.
Yeah. I think here, Red Bull have no plans to bring in upgrades for I think until round 7. They just straight up don't
Why do they
plan to
need
bring
one?
upgrades. And outside of that, though, there's been speculation around Sergio Perez's contract with Red Bull, just because of tension that is clearly seen in the team, even if they say that there's none. Um, and when asked about the possibility of bringing Lewis Hamilton to Red Bull, uh, Christian Horner said he has no desire to bring him to the team and that they straight up don't need him. And
They don't.
I'm wondering, like, is it just because they have Max, or like, I mean, wouldn't it be sick to see Max and Lewis on the same team?
I
They
mean, it will
wouldn't
be.
want to be on the same
Of
team.
course not, but that's not the question I'm asking. I'm saying, wouldn't it be sick to see them on the same team?
It'd be.
Jakob, go.
It'd be brilliant to see them on the same team. I'd love to see them on the same team because then you have equal cars. You can give time to each person. You'll
Yeah.
see who's the better driver on everything nullified.
Yeah.
But Jos Verstappen will never let that happen.
Yeah.
I think there's too much bad blood there between the two of them. As much as they say they respect each other, I think
Yeah.
there's too much bad blood there for that to actually happen. And I don't think they need Lewis. Like
No.
I think like a team like Ferrari needs Lewis. A team like Mercedes needs Lewis.
Yeah.
Red Bull right now don't need Lewis because they have Max.
Mhm.
It'd be a different situation if it was like Daniel and Checo, because then you could go and say, you know what, Daniel's not World Championship material, neither is Checo. Lewis is. So then Christian Horner could go and recruit Lewis.
Mhm.
But you don't need him right now. With Max, you don't need him.
Yep. There also is something else, and I mean, I'll ask you both about it, but apparently, and this is still mostly rumor, but there has been a proposition for a swap of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. And so I'm kind of curious what your guys' opinions are on it.
It's weird. I don't know. I can't see it happening. I don't know what the upside would be for Lewis to go to Ferrari.
I think Ferrari need Lewis.
Yeah, of course. But like, so I guess what he just would try to get money out of them. Like, I don't know
I mean,
if I see Ferrari being competitive though.
I disagree with that. I mean, yeah, obviously the upside. I think for both, there's not a lot of upside because both teams are kind of struggling right now.
Mhm.
But I think for Charles Leclerc, this is just rumor.
Yeah,
For
of
me,
course.
in my head, it's like 99% like not happening.
Mhm.
But I think in a scenario in which it does happen, I think for Charles Leclerc, it puts him in a team that will stop treating him like the golden boy. That will stop treating him like he can do no wrong, like he is, who he is. Like Toto Wolff will like not allow that. George Russell is just as talented as him, so I think it stops treating him like the golden boy and stops mollycoddling him. And for Lewis, it gives him that challenge that Michael took on, where when Michael shifted from Benetton to
Yeah.
Ferrari, he had to build a team up to win those championships. So I think whether that's a challenge that Lewis wants is like an entirely different question, but it presents him that opportunity and also presents him with the opportunity to drive for Scuderia Ferrari.
Yep. I was honestly trying to wait for Jeremy for this question, but I'm just gonna jump completely off the current F1 train right now. So, first off, this is all hypotheticals. Let's just say that both of you have enough money to enter into Formula One to buy your own drivers as you see fit outside of the ones that are currently on the grid. First off, what car company or motorsport company, whatever you want to call it, would you partner with in order to be on the F1 grid? Me
You know,
personally,
I
I
kind of
pick
like the idea
BMW.
of Ford. Okay. I like
Ford?
the idea of Ford.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd pick I'd pick shit. I'd probably pick like Lamborghini or Rolls Royce. Rolls Royce. I pick Rolls Royce.
Interesting. Any particular? Okay, has Rolls Royce ever had a motorsport
I don't
team
think.
ever? Okay, that would be interesting just to see it.
And then
Yeah.
you guys know the story of Lamborghini and Ferrari, so that would be an
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But also, I mean, so first off, for those who don't know, Lamborghini is a sub company of the Volkswagen Group, um, who were trying to take two bites of the apple with trying to get both Porsche and Audi into Formula One. They got one, which is great. So I don't think they're too butthurt about Porsche not getting in. But
Yeah.
imagine how cool it would be, or weird it would be, to see three teams from the VWG on the grid at the same time. Like, imagine if you had Lamborghini, Porsche, and Audi on the grid at the same time. That would be mayhem. But also a great
Yeah,
marketing
for sure.
tactic.
Be fun
Now,
to watch.
outside
It's
of
really
that,
unnecessary.
uh, drafting picks for your team. Claire, you can have the first pick. Who are you picking up that's not on the current F1 grid?
Is not on the current F1
Yes.
grid?
Yes.
Okay.
You can have any driver
I'm gonna
from
steal.
anywhere, any series.
I'm gonna steal Daniel.
Okay. Jakob.
Alright. Alright.
Don't laugh at me. Come on.
I'm taking like dead or alive.
No,
Or like-
alive.
No.
I'm taking Seb. I'm taking Seb any day of the
Oh
week.
my god. Okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna take Teo Porcher.
Okay.
Claire, who's your second driver?
Colton Herta.
Oh, that's an interesting one. This is an American team if I've ever heard of one. She's got
Oh
Ford,
my God.
Yeah,
she's
Ford.
got Daniel Ricciardo, and she's got Colton Herta. This is every U.S. fan's dream team.
Let's go.
Jakob, who's your second driver?
I'm taking Stoffel Van Dorn.
Now, see, I don't know whether or not to laugh at you or to.
Bro, do you
Like,
know
he's
how
good,
talented Stoffel
but-
Van Dorn is?
No, I understand. It's just like you laughed at her for picking
Why- who-
Daniel, and then you pick Stoffel.
I guarantee you, if you put Stoffel Van Dorn, if you remove the McLaren part of his career, had that gone
So the
to-
majority of his
had he
career.
gone to it was only 2 to 3 years of his career.
Yeah.
His F1 career. You put him in a team like Mercedes, or put him in a team that would actually build him up, as opposed to destroying him the way Fernando Alonso and Zach Brown did. That's an L to McLaren. The way they destroyed him, he'd be one of the most talented drivers on there. He'd be right alongside in the McLaren with Lando right now, had they not destroyed him the way they did. Stoffel Van Dorn is an extremely talented driver, and I would take Stoffel. I have faith in Stoffel.
I
Good old
agree.
Stoffel. Fernando Alonso
Hey,
and Zach
Patrick.
Brown destroyed him.
Okay, hold on. Who's your first driver
Facts.
again?
I wonder how he feels. Wait,
Seb.
I wonder how he
You have
feels
Seb
about.
and Stoffel on the same team.
Yeah. I think
I
experience
I wonder how Stoffel
and
feels
sort of
about being
youth
the reserve driver for Aston Martin right now.
Yeah, they actually
For
showed him in the
Fernando.
paddock. A second driver. I'm gonna pick somebody who's probably experienced. I don't care whether or not they've won a race, but they just have to have F1 experience. So just because of age and somebody I want to keep on the team, I'm probably gonna pick somebody like I'm gonna say Antonio Giovinazzi. And it's not. I don't see him as a great driver.
And you
It's
were
not
giving
like-
me shit for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Antonio Giovinazzi.
so it's not like I see him as a
Giovinazzi.
fantastic driver. He's a midfield driver at best, but like for
You're having a midfield team right now, sir.
yes, that's okay. Me personally. So what you have is a very
Fine,
young,
Jakob and I can
talented-
just
Yeah.
we can just fight it for wins. You're gonna be in the back with your Williams.
Anyways, my team's the one that actually
I have a
has
full
formula
team.
right now. Okay, so so your team would be a young, unknown how good he is in formula type driver with a very experienced, proven winner. in a team that has been in Formula 4, you'd have two old people on the same team. One who
Old
doesn't
is
have
relative.
in relativity to sport, one who has no drive to be in the sport, and the other one who can't find a seat in the sport, and a team that's never been in the
Okay,
sport.
you're you're picking this apart. This is just like I'm taking like
Fun.
Red Bull Seb. I'm taking Red Bull Seb.
You
Like
want Red Bull,
like
Seb?
I'm taking Red Bull
I'm
Seb,
talking
and I'm
current.
taking.
I'm talking current driver. Okay.
Okay, so you mean to tell me that you would take Antonio Giovinazzi?
Hmm. Over what?
Why would
A
you not
retired
take like?
driver and like.
Hell yeah! Why would you not want Seb? Imagine you gave him like a championship
Okay,
winning
you
car.
took him first. That's why I didn't take him.
Yeah, but like, why would you take Antonio Giovinazzi when you could take someone like if you gave like Jensen Button a championship winning car or Felipe
Well,
Massa
I'm
a
trying to
championship
pick
winning car
drivers.
Or Nico Rosberg.
I'm trying to pick
Or
drivers who are
Nico.
actually still willing to drive.
You don't know. I mean,
Felipe Drogovic. Like, there's
Justin's
some
driving
people.
So I picked
NASCAR
Teo
cars.
Porcher
Antonio
because
Giovinazzi.
So my young driver choice was narrowed down to either Federico Vesti or Teo Porcher, just because I think both of them are talented enough to be in F1. The only other driver on the F2 grid or a young driver I see that's not already on a team as a reserve driver in any capacity that could be on the F1 grid is maybe Jack Doohan. I don't see Victor Martins on the F1 grid ever. I don't see like most of the drivers on the F2 grid ever being there. But those are the three that I highly rate. Teo Porcher chief amongst them, just because in
So
my opinion.
why are you putting Antonio Giovinazzi?
Well, okay. He has F1 experience, and I don't care how bad of a driver he is. There's not very many other drivers who have F1 experience that aren't already on a team, and he is a reserve driver for Ferrari, but he'll never get back in the seat. They have Robert Schwartzman waiting, and he's
What about
probably better.
Mick Schumacher? You don't want to
He's
give
on
him a
He's
spot?
on a team.
No, that doesn't count.
That's what I was.
You can pick a reserve driver.
I still wouldn't pick Mick just because he hasn't had the experience of
Yeah,
driving a good car.
Staffel's a reserve driver. Daniel's a reserve driver.
Anyway,
That's what we just.
I wouldn't pick Mick.
See, the thing is, like, you pick Daniel because obviously he has pedigree. He's proven.
Mhm.
Stoffel has proven, to me at least, has pedigree in FE. He has pedigree in FE. He has pedigree in F2, F3. I think he's one of the more underrated talents that could have been an
Okay,
F1.
so real quick, my whole thing about Stoffel is I will believe in Stoffel Van Dorn having talent in Formula E because he did win a championship quite handedly. I mean, he had one other competitor who was with him. I won't believe in Formula E drivers unless Nick De Vries performs in Formula One, just because like it's so hard for drivers from other. You know, we don't know that yet. From what I see, I've seen two P14
We do know that. Let's go, De Vries.
Anyways,
De Vries.
I can't judge other Formula series or any other series that's on the grid until they're on the grid. And so far, the only people that I've ever really seen do well on the grid are the ones who come through the actual Formula system. So, I mean, if, let's say Nick De Vries does fantastic after his first year in AlphaTauri and he just, like, starts doing these majestic point-scoring performances, cool, maybe give Stoffel Van Dorn a chance again. When he's, like, what, 30-something already? I mean, give him another chance, sure, but for me, it's not like I've seen it enough to rate him that highly. No offense to, of course, you know, the terrible situation that he got put in with McLaren, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. That being said, like I said, I picked Antonio Giovinazzi just because he has driven, he drives with Ferrari, which is nice. He's driven the Alfa Romeo, which has had a Ferrari engine, and I just think that given time, I could just get rid of him. All I want to do is just have someone who can teach Teo teach him the ropes.
Okay, I want to interrupt.
Yep.
On your whole second chance little shindig that you had there about Stoffel.
Yeah.
You're an Alex Albon fan.
Yes.
He got humiliated
By Max Verstappen.
by Max Verstappen,
Who
and
doesn't?
still got a sec. Daniel Ricciardo didn't get humiliated. He got destroyed. He didn't get humiliated. He wasn't like he competed with Max. He was like competitive to an extent.
Mm.
Albon got humiliated. Absolutely, it was a humiliation by Max Verstappen.
Mhm.
Like that he did, and still got a second chance in that Williams, despite what I might
mean,
have to say.
it's the same argument that Valtteri Bottas got humiliated by Lewis Hamilton and still went Alfa
He didn't
Romeo.
get. No.
Yes.
You can't say he got humiliated if you say he could win a championship when he could win a championship in that car.
No, that's
He didn't
true.
get humiliated. He got beat.
He did
got
not
beat
get
over-
humiliated. He did not. Yeah, I agree with you.
You're comparing.
Jakob.
You're not. It's not the
Won
same
races. Yeah.
Mm.
Alex Albon won. Didn't win a race.
No.
Had 2 podiums.
He had 2 P3s, that's it.
Got lapped by Max.
Yeah, so in my opinion, so I don't think Alex Albon, did he drive for Toro Rosso ever?
He did. Yeah.
Okay. Outside of Toro Rosso, I don't think he really drove any actual cars. Not that Toro Rosso was worth driving. So I think Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon didn't have fair chances for Red Bull, and I'm pretty sure most people can probably agree on that. Just because Red Bull put 6 years into Max Verstappen and gave Pierre Gasly 4 months and gave Alex Albon had much more of a chance, but I don't think it's fair to compare anybody to Max unless it's Lewis, maybe Checo.
Yeah, but you're comparing not Checo, but you're comparing like Stoffel to Alonso. Alonso like, Alonso and Zach destroyed him because of the way they treated him and the way Alonso like behaved. But and all this Alonso hype train seems to forget that Alonso is a serial cheater.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So I think the argument that he isn't deserving of an F1 seat because of one aspect of his career is not valid, at least in my opinion.
Hey, Jakob, it's okay. Patrick's team sucks, and our teams are a lot better than his, so he's just having a little moment.
I don't know if your team's a lot better than but my team's definitely better than his.
Okay, I think my team is better than yours, so I was trying to be nice there, but whatever, man.
I don't know. Looking at the history of things, I mean, Ford has a history of sport. What's up?
If anyone watching, listening, whatever, drop who you think would win a season. Which team?
Awesome.
That's all. Okay, continue.
So, on the topic of Formula 2, kind of still comparing it to Formula 1, Oscar Piastri won the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix when he was in Formula 2, and he put that McLaren on P9 on a track that he knew. So I'm kind of curious on, I mean, obviously he grew up racing in Melbourne. That's where he's from. So clearly he's got some knowledge of the circuit. Do you think that he's going to be able to use his knowledge of the circuit to really push that McLaren a little bit further than it should be?
No, he hasn't been there since 2015.
True.
It will be an almighty defeat. It will be an almighty non-point
according
scoring.
to Claire, I mean, Lando's going to do pretty well this year. I mean, in this race, a P7 finish apparently.
Yeah. Okay, that was my prediction, my crazy prediction. Okay.
Your entire prediction
I don't
is
know.
just wild.
Well, Max is going to DNF again, and things are going to be crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
wild.
after you see, like, even just like a little bit of chaos with like the sliding off the curbs and stuff, I feel like there's going to be a safety car. Someone's going to hit someone else at some point. I don't know. Yeah, something's going to happen. So why, if I just did like a perfectly perfect prediction, like you're not going to get them all right, so why not just throw some curveballs in there?
Yeah, there's a difference between throwing, a wrench in the plans, a curveball into it, maybe a couple, but like, you threw 6.
I believe in putting good vibes out there. If you put it out there, then it has a chance. If you don't, then McLaren's just going to stay, P18, P19, whatever. So I'm throwing Lando up to P7 because stranger things have happened.
So I'm going to ask you guys both this question because both your teams are kind of in the same boat on this. And this is coming from a Williams fan, so I really don't have a right to speak about it. But McLaren are going to get their wind tunnel in May. So their entire focus is basically entirely on 2024. And Toto Wolff said it's going to take them anywhere from 6 months to a year to catch up to where Red Bull is currently. So I'm kind of wondering, where is your guys' like faith in these teams coming from that you think they're going to come back through the field?
Just blind loyalty, pretty much. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Jakob?
I don't have to use blind loyalty because my team has built 8 championship-winning cars. So
Before.
yeah.
Not right
So
now.
you know, right now for the last 2 years, it's not gone well. But I have faith in my team and my driver, my goat. So you know,
The
I
world's
think it's
goat,
it's
Lewis Hamilton.
possible.
Mhm.
It is. I think for me at least, I fully believe that maybe not this year, but we will get back to championship winning ways. Whether it's this year or next year remains to be seen.
Okay. Um, do you think that anybody is going to win a championship off of Red Bull in the next 2 years?
Yes,
Okay,
100%. I
is,
think
Not
is
this year.
anybody catching it this year?
no.
All right. And I'm pretty sure you guys would probably say Checo is probably going to be the closest person to Max this year.
Yep, pretty much.
All right.
I
Um,
would like to say that Checo has a chance. Perhaps
Checo's
You
we
think
shall
Red
see.
Bull
got a
going to give
chance.
Checo a chance?
Red Bull will burn their garage to the ground before Checo ever wins a drivers' world championship.
Okay, actually, on this topic, do you guys think that, okay, let's say it's Checo first, Max second. Do you guys think that they're making Checo give up the spot this race?
100%.
Not this early. No, I mean I don't think Checo
I
would do
think
it.
Max will
this early.
try. I think Max will try his hardest to get that position swapped. And if he doesn't get team orders, he will. If he has to dive bomb Checo, he will do it. I promise you.
So one of the things that
I
I've been seeing recently is that, I mean, Checo's finally at his limit with Max. I think everybody can see it, and he's been very patient with Max over the past 2 years. Two? Yeah, 2 years. In 2021, I mean, he did literally everything in his power to make sure that Max got the championship. 2022, I mean,
actually, so I was reading an article
Yep.
today. It was about like the tension between Checo and Max,
Mhm.
and it was basically like a timeline of like how the build up and why it's at its peak right now, right?
Sure.
And so it started obviously with 2021, where Checo defended Lewis in Abu Dhabi
And I mean, it
to
was some
have
fantastic defense. Just
fantastic defending. No one's gonna argue
Yeah.
that. No one's gonna say anything different,
yeah.
right?
For reference,
You go.
Checo backed up Lewis to the point where they were lapping in the 134s, where Max was lapping in the 128s.
Correct. So he blocked Lewis. He defended that position like a killer, like a
Yeah.
beast.
Like
Flash
an animal.
forward. Exactly. Flash forward to Brazil, right? Flash
Yeah.
forward to Brazil. Max doesn't let Checo pass to get P2 in the championship. He can still win. He can still win. Get P2 if he gets P2 in Abu Dhabi, right?
Yep.
If Checo gets P2 in Abu Dhabi, it's Max, Charles, Checo.
Yep.
Max just drives off into the distance, doesn't do any blocking, nothing of the sort.
Mhm.
Someone asked Max, why didn't you back up Charles so that Checo could try and get past? And Max's code of the season, Max said, I could have done it, but is that considered fair racing? Is that how we wanted to see the season end? And so, listen, Checo is definitely at his. I read that and I was like, yo, dog,
And
you
so-
cannot be saying that shit.
Yeah, and so what I was seeing
No,
was
Max does not deserve Checo at all.
no.
Oh
What I
my
was
god.
saying is that like Checo is finally at his limit with him, because after the last race where, I mean, Max didn't listen to team orders. Checo knows it, and Checo was like, "Why isn't Max listening?" And why, like, there's obviously like the pin needle that is the fastest lap, and everybody knew that Max was gonna go for the fastest lap, and he literally blew off the engineers and GP just so that way he could get the fastest lap. And Checo's just like, yeah, I mean, do you guys think he's just done? Like, there's no reason for him to let Max through this early in the season. And even if like if they're more than a race went apart, I can see team orders being implemented. But until there's a 25-point gap, I'm pretty sure Chaco has no reason to give anything to Max.
Agree.
Yeah. Outside of that, George Russell snapped back at Lewis Hamilton. So after the race in Jeddah, Lewis is like, yeah, George went one way with the setup. I went the other way. Usually the way that George went with it would be the one that was wrong, and today he just happened to get it right. So he was a bit more lucky than me. And then George snapped back today or yesterday saying, yeah, it wasn't luck. I spent all night working with my engineers to, do the setup that I preferred and push the car to the limit that I wanted to go to. And so, I don't know, Jakob, how do you feel about George kind of just like, basically saying I just did the right thing and you didn't type of deal?
I think it's part of any team dynamic tension. Every team's going to have moments of tension and comments being made. Look at Red Bull. Ferrari will definitely have it during the season between Charles and Carlos.
I don't even think they have room for that, honestly.
You would think they don't have the bandwidth for it, but somehow they will generate it. They generated last year in Silverstone, so I think all teams have this inter-team tension now. Whether that affects racing on track is a different issue, but I'm fine with all these comments being made.
Yep.
Because I think George and Lewis have a mature enough relationship where they're probably discussing these things behind closed doors, and we just don't hear about it. So.
I forgot. We totally skimmed past them because there is a team that everybody forgets, but Alpine are in their usual spot in the middle of the pack between the front runners and the back runners. Where do you guys see them finishing this race?
I'd say they stay in the same position they started in.
It's
P7, 8, something like that.
Alpine, this is the issue with Alpine. They stay in one position. They don't go forward. They don't go backward. So what are you supposed to say? Yep. Unless they start running into each other. There's not really anything that's going on with Alpine, right? So,
yep.
I think they stay in the same position until I see
Yeah. Last thing before we're out of here, James Vowles has gotten the backing of a couple other team principals where he believes that the teams in the lower part of the grid, outside of just getting more wind tunnel and CFD time, should also get a higher budget cap, and the teams at the front end of the grid should get a lower budget cap for the season. And his reasoning behind it was that it's one thing for you to get more wind tunnel and CFD time, but if you can't do enough with your budget to do anything with it, then it's kind of pointless. So, how do you guys feel about that? Because I feel like it's a pretty fair thing. Kind of following up on what Yost Capito said before, even if with the budget cap, even if the lower teams have the opportunity to use their wind tunnel time, and let's just say every team is running at the budget cap, that means that every team is moving upward at the same rate because the budget cap is making it so the teams with more CFD time don't really get more out of it. So, would you agree with something like this?
Yes and no. So, at first glance, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then at second glance, it's well, what are we trying to do here? Make all the cars be the same? Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know what I mean? There always is going to be underdeveloped cars. That's kind of the fun part of it. You get what you get at the budget cap now. And you have to make the best of it with your team. Sorry if you're starting out as a smaller team, but I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't think that's the final solution.
No, I don't like it. It's just even if you were to increase the budget cap for say Williams, say go from 130 to say 150.
Yep.
They don't have 150
No,
million
they
dollars.
don't.
So what difference does it make, right?
Yeah.
But and in what sport have you heard of different budget caps, right? Yes,
So,
for F1 is
outside
sort
of
of
budget caps, I think the thing that you can most easily relate it to is probably an NFL draft, where teams that do worse get better picks. And I guess it's compared to the CFD
but you also
time, but
that's the CFD time
Yeah.
and wind tunnel time. So
Yeah.
you set one budget cap and then you roll from there.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need different budget caps for different teams.
Mhm.
It's just like it makes no sense.
That's
I
fair.
don't agree with it.
You guys got anything else?
One final topic I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. McLaren has 47 sponsors.
Yes.
Is that just like too much? Like what the heck? Alfa Romeo has 45, and then Haas is down at 14. So
Kind of wondering what Alfa Romeo sponsors are, honestly. Half of them I can't even recognize.
I think you'll see McLaren sponsors drop off if they continue performing the way they're performing. So
Mhm.
I don't know, but they're getting a lot of time, like screen time. So that's the thing I'm trying to figure out is
Who was their new sponsor?
don't companies what?
Who was their new sponsor?
Um, one second.
I don't
Let's
think it was a
see.
big one, was it?
What did they Workday?
Workday.
Yeah, that's the new one.
Was that the new one?
Yeah, that was a new one.
Yeah.
Is Workday a big thing or no?
Yeah.
Workday's reasonably a big thing because of the they do like cloud services and all that, like
Okay, that makes
Salesforce.
sense. Yeah.
So reasonably because they're a growing company, but
Okay.
it's a pretty.
They signed a multi-year partnership with Workday.
It's like Oracle. It's like, but I don't think they're
Gotcha.
a title sponsor in
Okay.
that sense. The money is probably doesn't match up the same way.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but I was saying that companies when they're thinking about sponsorships, they're not thinking about how good the team is, kind of. Like I guess that you can say in your marketing, like for say CrowdStrike with Mercedes, like when they are winning, like that was a great thing to say. But if you're not going for the highest winning team, then you go for like screen time, right? Because that you want to be seen on TV, correct?
Yeah.
So I think McLaren won't have an issue, and Zach Brown's a sweet talker, and he'll figure out a way to keep him around. Don't you think?
I don't know.
They have 47, so they have some they can lose, and there's a little leeway.
Yes, that's true. I don't know. It's just like I feel like even with screen time and everything, the thing that most sponsors would probably look for is a winning team, just because at the end of the day,
You want to see,
a lot of the money that you get to give back to the sponsors comes from winning and doing well in the constructors. And if you can't give back to your sponsors, then there's a problem there.
and also you want to see like your sponsor. The sponsors want to see their brands like on the podium or
Yep.
champagne, Instagram posts of this person won, this was on the podium, fastest lap. So
That
For
and also,
sure, for
quite
sure.
frankly, the sponsors on McLaren, like, you couldn't
They're-
name most of them because the ones,
oh yeah,
because the main ones you see are OKX and Dell
Google,
and
Android.
Google, yeah. And it's like, okay, well, what are the other sponsors? Because most of them are like these really small name tags on like the halo or the front wing,
Yeah.
and you don't get to see those when the cars are going 300 kilometers an hour. You don't get to see them. So I don't
Yeah.
know. And even with the nose wing cam, like you don't get to see them because it's attached to the front of the front wing. So
Yeah.
the most important place that people want their sponsorships are on the rear wing, like Petronas, like Velas, like Kraken, and any other rear wing sponsor. The ones that are on the
Oracle.
sides, yeah, the ones that are on the sides, like Cognizant, OKX, Doralton Capital, things like that. So, I mean, obviously those companies aren't going to care too much about like how winning their team are because they have a gargantuan sponsorship right on the car. But things
Yeah.
like Workday and the other
Duracell
small,
battery,
yeah, I mean, Duracell batteries
the
probably
blue
doing great
mount
right now.
battery on top.
Yeah, so I don't know. Small sponsorship deals that have small names aren't going to care about screen time. They're going to care about you winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the topic of sponsorships, Williams got Kraken, which is nice. That's another massive sponsorship deal for them because they just got Gulf at the start of the year. They already have Doralton and Duracell, and they just got Kraken, which means now they have 4 huge sponsors for them. You couldn't name any of the other sponsors that they have. I think they have like 17. I don't care. They just got another big sponsor, and it's on the rear wing, so I'm happy. Also, James Vowles did say in an interview, I think 2 days ago, that he wasn't 100% sold on the Mercedes engine. And in his words, he said if you're gonna paint your house, you don't just take the first quote you get. You usually want to look at it like two or three other quotes. And I'm just like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you don't want, like, just because you're friends with Mercedes and friends with Toto doesn't mean you're just gonna buy what they have. For quite frankly, Red Bull has the best engine, and if they have the best engine, I don't know why you wouldn't go to them.
Sure, but probably just negotiating tactics, though.
Yep.
Either.
Um.
You seen Star Wars? The scene where Anakin Skywalker screams "Straighter." That's
Mhm.
Stay lost.
It's for the good of the company. But we're at our time. That's all we have for you guys. If you stayed to the end of this episode, do what Claire said to do in the middle of the episode and let us know which team would win, or drop a team that you would make in 2 drivers in a car company. But until next time, that's Lights Out F1 podcast. You can do the thing.
And it's lights out and away we go.